What exactly is animation? What exactly is animation? Like, what is it? It feels like some recontextualization of reality. But there's like this kind of show off, portion of it. Like it's very, an extension of ego or superego. Like, check out how I reinterpret reality through my imagination. And it really appeals to the control freak, because you get to control time and space and spacing and timing and shapes and poses and behaviors, and you're very much like, I'm in control of reality. I am a god. And especially in stop motion, you're just outside of time playing Lord of the Universe, right? So it appeals to, the super OCD God complex. But what? It also has this very noble side. Like when the pure theatrical instinct comes rushing through you, you want to share something very primordial, like deep and primordial, and that's, I feel like, and it definitely touches upon this whole thing of like a manifestation of reality, like dream it, plan it, create it, live it, blah blah blah. And it's definitely like very advanced language and sculpture, because you're sculpting something that's dynamic and in space and time. You have a timeline, you have the camera angle, you have the z-axis, you have this 2D space that you're manipulating 3 dimensions within. And so you have all the compositional rules. It's so all spatially sophisticated art form. Because you have coming to and away from camera, you have all these rotations, you have all this up, down, northwest, south, south, east. And you have the light and the shadow. And, you have the foreground, midground, background, and the overlapping shapes. And you're tracking objects. And it kind of tickles this weird obsessive compulsive thing when it comes to, I don't know, it's like at its core, as an art form, it has just so many deep, like the I don't know, it's hard to get to the true source of what animation does for the artist. I guess you could say that about any art form, but there's a sort of a technical sophistication to animation that does bridge sort of some heightened dimensionality. It's like very multi-dimensional art form. Like quite literally, it's multi-dimensional. It's not. It can be very basic. It can be very just like drag objects across screen, linear, blah blah blah. Point A, point B stuff. And very math rigored. It can be, but to do it really well, there's this emotional component. There's this hyper logic. It's like the logic of the heart. Emotional intelligence, the wellspring of life, the illusion of life. Is such a great two words to sort of hitch to this concept. That would be an interesting thing. Like, if I was going to start interviewing animators, I think I would be like, how would you define animate? Like, what does animation mean to you? It must mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And it's not just something you can just quickly describe, because there's a lot of steps to get to a profound work. You don't just stumble into it and start making profound. I guess some people do right off the bat. They're just like, whoa, they get it. I think if you get it right away, you can animate stuff from a very pure core place, But it took me a really long time to make personal work that I was somewhat pleased with, because it's not just like whipping out a painting or a drawing or a sculpture where you're like, okay, I'm gonna devote some time to this, or even writing, a great play or a novel or because you just sit yourself down and write it. But with animation, you got to build all this stuff and light all this stuff and animate all this stuff and edit it and put music and sound effects to it. And it's like this multi-layered rigorous. Um, it's yeah, it's a little too. I mean, you can do it very self-contained, small, immediate approach. I mean, everybody designs their approach to work to be optimized to their working style. I don't know. You know, I think of certain animators, like, what's his name? The Hirschfeld guy that makes those cool 2D things. You know, or Nick Park did, you know, at the beginning he had there was a simplicity to it, you know, like these locked off shots and creature comforts. It was all performance. It was like, okay, here's a comic strip. You know, these vignettes, these moments within this specific space. And it reminded me of, you know, single panel comics. You know, it's like, boom, we're here. This is where the setup and punchline of the joke takes place. This is where this moment lives, contained within this box. There's a purity to it. There wasn't a lot of cuts. It was, you know, like, achieve, you know, great character design, great lighting, great composition, and great performance. You know, if you can put all those things together in the gumbo, you're going to have a tasty little scene. And, but I like stuff that really moves. I like getting that camera to move. I like getting some dynamicism. I mean, shit, Nick Park does too. Some, you know, like, when he kept advancing his film and directing style, some of my favorite stuff was like all the chase scenes in Wallace and Gromit. You know, like when they're on the train laying track and it's all this in-camera blurring and stuff. Or the Were-Rabbit, you know, jamming through the town, or this latest one, Jesus, it's like car chases everywhere. Really, really, really interesting setup and payoff, but with that same kind of simplified comic aesthetic. Really, there's such a great purity to his work. It all kind of needs to serve a story. You know? It's what do you have to say? What do you have to say to people around you? You know, that's the thing. That's the thing. If you can cultivate that deep burning desire to say something to other people, like, I have got something to say to you. You know, that's what you have to, you know, that's when you stand up to be noticed. Because as a filmmaker, you're saying something. You know, it's like, great animators are not a dime a dozen, but they're technicians. You know, they're really hyper focused on movement and performance. And a filmmaker is something different. A filmmaker is somebody who writes something, designs something, maps out this, series of moments that has a message. Has a larger message to kind of put out there, or a series of small messages that are kind of profound. I follow somebody on YouTube that makes these short little films, these like personal films. And the other day she was taking her camera, her phone, and shooting journal entries. These little one-liner, these sort of like profound statements that she was collecting in a book, and she just ran her phone across these, these like 2, 3, 1 sentence quotes that were these profound epiphanies, these like philosophical statements that were, these, when you have this like profound moment where you're like, oh shit, this is something to really hang your hat on, or something to get you through a tough spot in your life. And it was really moving to read this collection of very dense pearls of wisdom, one after the other. I mean, a great story could literally be something like that, I was like, wow, this is a moving experience, just reading these truisms. I mean, that's essentially what Brothers Grimm, and it's like these parables, like the old kind of children's stories, where they were like a build up to a moral, and the moral is, brush your teeth at night before you go to bed, or whatever it is. The moral is, don't take your friends for granted, or whatever. And don't concentrate on the money, concentrate on the other, or the friend, or the relationship, or the and so you have these sort of profound stories that guide you to some sort of epiphany. And I don't know if that's the hallmark of great writing or what, but just having something to say in an interesting way, I think, is more at the heart of animation. Because having something to say is, that's important, but in an interesting way. Because animation kind of is a style-based art form as well. Because you're styling the reality, you're styling the look, you're styling the characters. And it's nice if you go off norm, off the Richter, a little off to the side. If you get kind of bold with your design sensibilities and do something unique, or reminiscent of, like your 2, 3, 4 favorite artists become this way to sort of vector a style, like you pick a really great illustrator to inspire character design and lighting. You pick a really great action film or genre, hyper violent Korean action films are going to be sort of like my approach to camera movement. Or you're like making a bold choice, like I'm going to shoot this on, I'm going to shoot it wide open, long exposures on Fuji film, and it's going to have that Wong Kar-wai kind of greenish, bluish, blurry, thin negative look, it's like that. I don't know. Eastern films of a certain era have this sort of like ultra modern look that mainstream films in the West just didn't really have, because like the stock of film was a little different. I just think Fuji reads different than Kodak, and especially like the old color Fuji tended to kind of, I don't know what I'm talking about. I think there's just so much that goes into making a meal, making a stop motion film's like making a really you have to limit your menu and your choices down to specificity that holds saturation of thought. You hone it to a laser point so that it's just like wherever you point that camera, it's just burning with good choices, really good choices. And every now and then you get a film where all the choices are in line, in alignment. And it feels inevitable. There's an inevitability to the end result. I guess that's what I love about Nick Park. It just feels like duh. It's like when you pick up a Gary Larson comic, you're like duh. Or you look at The Simpsons, you're like duh. This is, no wonder it's iconic. No wonder it all holds together so beautifully. Because there's a saturation and a coherence and a vectored focus to all these choices. It's not just fucked off kind of like non sequiturs, which you can really, I don't know, I can fly off the handle with a lot of my choice making. When it's blue open skies at the beginning of a project, and you're like, we don't really know what the aesthetic is, and we don't really know how we're going to move the camera. We don't really know if it's what the tone is, if it's going to be serious or comedy or tragedy or, but you have to start making clear choices, right? It can't just be. And so when you read that script, or when you write that script, some of those choices start to get made for you. Like they become inevitable choices that are driven by the logic of the piece you're working on. And that's a conversation, that's a back and forth, that's a frequency, on the dial, you're tuning that specific channel in. And I think, that is a skill right there. What's appropriate for the thing you're working on. I'm directing a music video right now, and it's like, I have a lot of ideas. I have a lot of things I want to do. I love going abstract. But is abstract appropriate for this? I don't know. No, the song sounds like it needs something a little bit more poppy and commercial, visually speaking. Like, like urban dolls, or, like very graffiti culture, rather than haggard old turn of the century wooden hand painted dolls. I may want to aesthetically do something very kind of Brothers Quay or Schwenkmeyer, but the piece may want like, oh god, what's his name? Like Akira. The piece may want, like, oh god, what is it? I'm blanking on some of these. Something Valley. Oh, fucking whatever. But so do your homework. Check shit out. What are your influences? And then can you throw all that shit away and really find your instincts? What are your instincts? And then tooling around with a piece of wood in your hand and a fucking knife. What are you carving? What is your unconscious carving? Like, you have to also let the muse meet the medium halfway. And so you're teasing into like a static electric field that also is like giving you feedback. It's a two-way conversation that artists have real time with their art, as they're teasing out a piece of tinfoil on the fucking, whatever. You're sewing a thing, or you're painting, or you're doing you're zhuzhing the clay or whatever. And then when it feels right, some people just are kind of clued in a very specific, tight manner to that field. Because it's so innate. I don't even know if it is a field. You look at drawings that guys like Nick Park do, and you're like, oh. There is a specific way that you're going to draw right here. And that's cooked in. It's innate. It's not. There's not a lot of variety. And in a way that's what the pure artist is. It's there's no false notes. I don't know what I'm fucking talking about. Jesus Christ, it's late. I gotta go.